Hello, welcome to the Gen Z Perspective channel. I am your host, and today we're going to look into the latest in the federal government shutdown. As of recording this, it is day 38, making it the longest government shutdown in history. Um, and also, as of recording this, the government has not been funded yet. So there's the other context part of this. But anyways, before we get into the video, if you like the content, consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button. It'll go a long way for a channel this size. Even for a size of channel this. At one point, every channel this on YouTube started small. So, anyways, let's dive into the government shutdown. So, in case you live under a rock, haven't been paying attention to your surroundings or the news, the government was shut down in October 1st due to not having a appropriations funding bill for the fiscal year 2026. Um, so currently it's sitting in the Senate. It doesn't have to go back to the House because the House already passed this continuing resolution in August. The Senate too. The Senate. Now the Senate's been sitting on it ever since. Now if the Senate decides they want to edit the continuing resolution, it'll get sent back to the House, and they go from there. But anyways, right now the Republicans they want to pass the same continuing resolution that was passed in March, along with the Democrats. The Democrats want to add 1.6 trillion dollars in funding, mostly for Medicaid for illegal immigrants, NPR PBS funding, um, Affordable Care Act subsidies, and some USAID stuff that was exposed, and Doge. Now, when we talk about the Affordable Care Act subsidies, there was pieces of Obamacare that was set to expire in 2021 when it was passed in 2011, I believe. The reason it didn't is because the Democrats funded it to 2023, basically kicking the can down the road. 2023 comes around, they did the same thing to 2025. Now, unfortunately, in 2025, the Democrats don't have control of the Senate. The Republicans do. The Republicans want to, tighten or basically pass legislation to um, patch up the loopholes within Obamacare so that those subsidies doesn't expire and cause people's healthcare premiums to double. Um, yeah, in an already expensive climate for health insurance, the last thing that people need is health insurance to double. So, and and the Democrats they've come up with a deal to pass the continuing resolution. They've come out and said that they would be willing to pass the continuing resolution if they added Affordable Care Act subsidies for the next year. Um, but the Republicans are saying no, we're not doing that. And kudos to them because if they cave to that, um, then if they don't, work something out, which most likely they won't, by 2026, that's going to be a rallying cry for the Democrat Party in the midterms is, oh, these dang Republicans, they don't want to help us with the Affordable Care Act subsidies, and you elect us, we're going to go in there and make those subsidies permanent. You know, I can already hear the talking points with that. So kudos to the Republican Party for um, not bending the knee to that. And the reason that it's such a contentious fight is because in the Senate rules they have to have 60 votes to pass the continuing resolution, unlike the House where they just need a simple majority to pass the continuing resolution. In the Senate, you have what they call a filibuster, which allows it's intended for the party not in power to have a voice in discussion of things. That's why they have the filibuster. You need 60 to pass the filibuster, and right now, the Republicans need five more Democrats to come onto their side to pass this continuing resolution. They already have a couple of Democrats already trying to pass this continuing resolution, such as John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. He's been staunchly, advocating to get the government open to, fund programs like SNAP and stuff like that. Um, the people, and the reason it's such a big fight right now and it affects a lot of people is because there's a lot of people that work in the federal government. And before you say, "Oh, the federal government is corrupt and it's a snake," okay, you might have a point with some people, but there's some other people that actually do work hard for the federal government, such as your air traffic controllers. They're in the tower to make sure you land uh, at the airport safely. You make sure you don't crash into another plane, or you don't crash into the tarmac. Stuff like that. They're already working hard enough as it is, and like the speaker have mentioned a couple weeks ago, that a lot of these air traffic controllers, after working a hard day, long hours, they have to get back in their car and work a second job just to put food on the table, just to try to keep the lights on. So you're already having to add a tremendous stress onto your mind from having to navigate all these planes all day under intense stress, and then you got to turn around and do some other stuff like DoorDash, Uber, and or just get a nighttime job, or to keep the food on the table, keep the bills paid, and stuff like that. And it's not just even air traffic controllers either. TSA agents, they're not getting paid either. Border Patrol agents, they're not getting paid. The big one is the military, they're not getting paid. Fortunately, with the military, the president has, or for one pay period, the president moved some money within the Department of Defense, or now it's called the Department of War, to make sure the military gets paid. But unfortunately, the government has still been shut down ever since, and they're looking at the military not even getting paid at all, which would really suck because with the military, they a lot of their stuff gets subsidized by the government, but still they don't really have. Most of the military isn't rich, especially the ones that at the lower ranks. They're not really rich, um, so it's really affecting the economy for a lot of these local areas, especially like military areas. Um, Including myself, I've been personally affected by the government shutdown. While I'm not going to get details of what I do for the federal government, what I do for the federal government is an asset to them. Um, it's not like I'm pushing a pen on a piece of paper all day long. That's not what I do. But I don't want to get into details of it because that's not the point of the video. The point is that even where I'm at, there is a lot of sour morale. Let's just say that a lot of people don't want to come in because why bother coming in when we have to do our normal job as expected but not get paid for it. No other company in the private sector is going to work like that. If you're talking about a private sector job, you're going to be saying, "Oh, you think in the private sector, a company's going to come up to you and say, hey, we really need you to come in today, and we think we value you as a team member, and you're a valuable member on our team, but." Don't worry about getting paid right now. We'll take care of you on your pay. Just show up and do your normal job. We got you on your pay. Um, you want to know how many people would show up to that? Zero. Nobody would show up to that. Um, yes. So so all the what they call accepted employees, they will, like your air traffic controllers, your TSA agents, and that stuff. They'll eventually get back paid, but the longer this thing goes on, the more strain and stress it puts on them. It's gotten to the point where some of these people are taking out bank loans, maxing out their credit cards, borrowing from the retirement just to just to keep the lights on and to keep the bills paid. It's an awful effect. So um, another thing that I want to touch on is that a senator from Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson, he introduced a bill. He actually introduced a bill last week, if not the week before last, that would state that um, he wanted to pay the people that's under accepted status, to give them money while they're still arguing over continuing resolution. And his logic is that, well, these guys are going to get paid once we open the government, so why don't we just help them out and give them their paychecks because they're working hard for us? That sounds like some common sense. You work for the federal government. You play a vital role for the federal government. Therefore, you should get paid for it, regardless of what these clowns in Washington are doing. Well, unfortunately, that bill got shot down, and they tried to bring it up yesterday, actually, and it once again got shut down by the Democrat Party. Now, when they asked the Democrat Party why you shut it down, they said, "Well, we want to pay all the government employees, not just the ones that's currently working now. They want to be able to pay the government employees that are currently furloughed." Well, the Republicans say, "Okay, if you want to do that, then pass a continuing resolution and it would pay everybody back." And the Democrat Party said, "No, we don't want to do that because of the reasons beforehand, earlier in the video." So it's I mean, the thing is, the Democrat Party is such evil people. I don't care where you lie on the political spectrum. Liberal, conservative, spaghetti monster. I don't care, but you're gonna shot down people. You're gonna shoot down a bill to pay people that currently work for you. I mean, that's kind of awful of them. They basically say we want those government employees that are currently working their asses off to work for free, and it's not going to last. And these government employees, they're not going to tolerate it for much longer because they're going to say, well, why bother showing up? Why don't I just get another job somewhere else that's actually going to pay me for my work? You know, that's that. And then it kind of leads into the segue of the next topic that I want to talk about, which is the filibuster itself. Now, like I said, the filibuster is intended for the party not in power to have a voice. President Trump has already done said that he wants to nuke the filibuster or get rid of it because, in his logic, once the Democrat Party gets back into power, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to nuke the filibuster to where you just need 51 senators to say yes to any bill. Unfortunately, while there is some Republican senators that say yes, let's get rid of the filibuster, there's some others that say no, we can't. And these are some of the things that aggravate the base. Is that you got some cowardly conservatives that are cowardly Republicans that want to stand on. Oh, we need to stand on our principles, and we need to do things like Ronald Reagan did back in the 1980s. Well, unfortunately, the 1980s have gone and went by. We don't live in the 1980s anymore, where bipartisanship was a lot easier to achieve than today. You might be able to achieve with a couple of Republicans and Democrats, but for the most part, you're not going to get a whole bunch of people to say, yes, we need to pass this, or no, we don't need to pass that. You know, Stuff like that. Um, so that's what aggravates the Republican base is that you you want to pass all these legislations, but you know you can't because you need a 60 vote filibuster, and you're not going to get Democrats to sign on to anything because their platform for 2025 is Orange Man bad and Trump evil and Trump fascist. And that's their platform for 2025 because they don't have nothing else that they can run on that is objectively rational. So that's that. So, anyways, the last I know I said the last thing, but the last thing is that people ask me, well, why don't you reveal your face on the videos? Well, it's not that I'm too ugly for the cameras and the cameras would shatter if I revealed my face. It's that there's no point in me doing that right now with a channel this size. I may do it once the channel gets bigger. May make a video, or even do a live stream of it. of my face, what I actually look like. But anyways, if you like the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you the next time.